I just got my Sirui Saturn 35mm T2.9 1.6x squeeze anamorphic 3 days ago, so it's time to create the ultimate anamorphic rig. There would be separate video about the lens, so don't worry. Funny story, I got this from German Amazon, because neither of the Sirui official shops got this lens in stock, but it seems that finally Sirui sold it to me anyway. Weird. Why not use the Sony a7 IV I already own, or maybe another E-mount camera, or maybe my Blackmagic camera. Open gate 3x2 mostly, because with the most popular 1.6x squeeze lenses, by popular I mean the cheapest, you get exactly 2.4 to 1 ratio Cinemascope in this mode. Cinemascope originally was 2.66 to 1 or 2.55 to 1, but due to the film technical processes like magnetic tracks and negative assembly splices, recommended projection ratio became around 2.4 to 1. So actually 6K open gate with 1.6 squeeze is the closest to the most used Cinemascope ratio. Such Cinemascope footage could be comfortably watched on 21:9 monitor with just small black bars, and our brain connects this look with the cinema movies, although wider aspect ratio too. With Sony's 16:9 and this lens you get 2.85 to 1. With FX6 in 4K DCI mode, which is 17:9, you get your final ratio around 3:1, so really wide footage. And with Blackmagic in 16:9 using law of nanomorphs with 1.5 squeeze, it gets to 2.67 to 1. Because for anamorphic shooting, the taller the sensor, the better, and in this case, it is actually wider. The examples shown are shot on S5IIX in different resolution and ratios, so you can clearly see that switching from 3x2 causes to lose top and bottom of the frame, because used sensor area is just shorter or wider, but never taller. Sure, you can crop to desired ratio, but this way you lose resolution and you have to be aware how to frame your shots, because some parts are going to be discarded. It could be easily done with frame guides in camera or external monitor, but it's another step during shooting, which makes it more complicated than it should be. And from 3x2 open gate I can crop to any ratio I want, because I got 6K to crop from, not 4K as with Sony cameras for example. Blackmagic 6K also gives 6K footage, but there is a crop because it is Super 35 sensor, so there are additional conditions. I will probably get Laowa nanomorph anyway for my Blackmagic, but at the moment the cheapest option, almost twice as cheap, is this Sirui Saturn. If you want to know more about the ratios and possibilities, use Tito's calculator, Anamorphics, on a budget channel. It's really useful to squeeze the footage in post. Link in description. The only downside of using 6K open gate in S5 II series is 4:2 long GOP format. That's the only limitation of that camera in my opinion, apart from rolling shutter. I bet S1H Mark II is going to have raw 6K open gate recording or 8K, depends what sensor it gets. With S5IIX I can also shoot raw with Anamorphics, but it is either 5.9K 16:9 or 4.1K 17:9 or 3.5K 4:3. So then I lose the benefits of shooting 3x2, but it is definitely more flexible than any camera in this price range. Of course, you can shoot RAW and then crop to desired ratio, but this way you discard some pixels as mentioned before. If this is for YouTube, then the resolution 6K is probably a better choice than RAW, because YouTube is going to duck up your footage anyway. But if this is for further delivery or production, then the choice is kinda hard, probably RAW is more important in that case. Anyway, this time I wanted a bit more robust rig, and since I'm not recording via HDMI, I wanted to record to SSD, although you can record 6K open gate to SD card too. So I opted for the Smallrig Cage. This is one of their two for S5 II series. I prefer this one because it has two cold shoes, so more options for accessories like mics. You can buy both Smallrig cages as kits, and I bought mine that way because I wanted a cable clamp, and I couldn't find it as a separate part. In the kit you got cage, cable clamp, and top handle. I already got a nice Smallrig handle, but the included one is smaller and more streamlined, so I actually decided to use this one. With the cage I can use even larger monitors than Atomos Ninja V, like my Cine, but to have the rig smaller, I'm using Atomos so far, just as monitor, not the recorder. I also got two options of hard drive mounts, but I'm using this one mostly, and I'm using Samsung T5 drive. Even though I can force PNI one into that clamp, I'm afraid I will destroy it after I force it too many times. The PNI is like a 0.5 millimeter wider than Samsung. Maybe I will just file it to make it a perfect fit later. For the filters I'm using Tilta clamp for the minimalistic option, and of course Sirui 35mm Saturn T2.9 with neutral flare. As always, all used elements are in the description down below as affiliate links. Let's put it together. So the cage comes with the tool. There are two locks on the sides which clamp to the strap handles on the camera. Put the camera inside like that, then screw in this screw, but not tighten it. Then this lock. The other lock is a bit more tricky. You have to unscrew the screw to the end because then you won't be able to lock it. So I'm pushing it in and screwing in. And with locks in, I'm screwing this tightly. And now the camera is securely attached to the cage and it's not spinning. And do not bother with the flap because it won't get in the way. So now it's time to screw in the drive holder. I'm mounting the drive holder as high as possible. And my USB cable of choice is actually Amazon Basics one because it got the proper length. And the caveat is when you install the drive, then the mic jack is covered, so you have to plug the mic jack before you put the drive here, and also you have to use the 90 degrees angle mic jack. So now the cable clamp. So you have to open the flap and then screw in the cable clamp, and you have to rather push it towards the back of the camera and screw it in, and that way you got the ports properly aligned. So first USB cable, lock it in place, and then HDMI cable. It doesn't matter that much because I won't be recording RAW, so this one works with 4K just okay. I guess you shouldn't over tighten this because you may bend the ports or even destroy them, so this is not needed anymore, so I can put it back here and it stays here with the magnets. So now the top handle is just a Nato rail one, and now the Atomos. I have chosen different mount option this time because if you use the cold shoe one with this handle, even if you screw it in very tight, then there is a chance it will slide out because there are no locks in this handle. I got actually the locking pin in my old handle, so if I want to use this one, that handle would be a safer option. With the locking pin, it cannot slide out. So this one got RE locking pins, so could be mounted either here, but I like it mounted in front of the handle. The only weird thing about mounting the monitor with this clamp in the front of the top handle is if you want to rotate it, because it won't rotate around this axis. You have to press it down and then rotate it and then press it back up if you want to shoot yourself, for example. But other than that, I think this position is nice because you can use this with a suitcase grip, or you can use it like that. So plug the cable into Atomos, and the last thing is to connect the lens. Now the stepping 58mm ring for the filters and the Tilta clamp itself. And done. What look it creates. Horizontally, it is like 22mm spherical lens, but vertically, it is equivalent of 35mm as it says on the lens, with the compression of 35mm. So actually the look is kind of different than shooting on 22mm or 24mm spherical lens and crop it in post. And can you guess which one of these clips is shot on an anamorphic lens and which one is just a spherical lens footage which is cropped to the Cinemascope? Let me know in the comments down below. And this small rig allows 6K OpenGate 3x2 lock recording to the SSD. There is also a RAW option if you got drive in the Atomos and you don't care about 3x2. It is also very light, just around 2400 grams. Maybe I just need to change the HDMI cable to the coiled one and this will look even cooler. As you can see, quite nice coincidence is that with Tilta clamp the rig is leveled. So you can put it on a flat surface and start shooting without the tripod. Of course, if I want more filters, I can easily put Tilta Mirage on the lens and it looks even cooler. And the most important, if it gives the shade for the lens, because it's very prone to flaring. And I do not mean anamorphic flares. So that could be mounted directly on the lens, and that way you can mount 5 filters at the same time, because this is the two-stage version. And with the MatteBox, it weighs 2600 grams. Instead of a MatteBox or Tilta clamp, you can also use screw-in ND filters, but do not use step-up rings, just one that goes directly from 58mm to whatever size your filter is, mine is 82, because if you use step-up rings, you are going to get the heavy vignetting. And for static shots, even handheld, you can live without follow focus, but for any focus pulls, I will recommend getting one. I got Tilta Mini follow focus and Smallrig Mini follow focus, and I'm choosing the latter every time because it is more precise and flexible. For example, it got 3 different gears to choose from. And for installing the follow focus, 2 rods are always a much better option because it's much more stiff, so the lens and follow focus does not move at all, while on one rod it is moving all over the place. To mount the follow focus, I got the rods on a Baseplate, and to mount it I have to mount the Arca Swiss plate at the bottom. Ideally the Arca plate should be mounted with 2 screws to not rotate, and that way it would be centered. Then I can mount the MatteBox on the rods. If you got MatteBox on the clamp, the whole rig is more rigid because the rods works like a tension box. And now just adjust the follow focus to line up with the gears on the lens. And that way we got the whole rig with the MatteBox follow focus, anamorphic lens, and 6K open gate 3x2 option to shoot on a SSD. There is power plate on the Baseplate, but I haven't figured out what is the best external power solution for this camera. I tried to power this via USB port while having the SSD drive connected, but so far I failed. I'll investigate this further, but at the moment it doesn't work. Seems it is either power delivery or SSD drive connection. You cannot do both, even with the splitters or USB hubs. Now it is much heavier, it is almost 3400 grams, but this is the complete setup with 5 stages of filtering if you need that much, follow focus, and ability to record to SSD. Of course, with 6K open gate, you can still record to SD cards if you want. Maybe you prefer this, so you can then remove the hard drive clamp and the hard drive and USB, and this way you got power solution, so maybe it is actually better option, more streamlined and be a bit lighter. And you can probably get away without the monitor because Panasonic S5IIX cameras have a really bright screen. Although in the anamorphic mode the picture is really small, so it might be really hard to focus. The camera got all the tools needed to properly expose the image, so in this department you do not need an external monitor. Although for focusing I think I recommend one. Without the handle and the monitor, camera, the cage, the lens and the drive clamp is only 1600 grams, so 3.5 pounds, really light. I think the expression cinematic look is overused, but actually when we see anamorphic footage from even cheap setups like this, our brain automatically associates the look with a movie, but cropping top and bottom from a spherical lens is just half the way. It actually creates more filmic look, but when also an anamorphic look is added, our brain is tricked it's a movie, at least from the beginning. When I recorded a random scene of car passing me by and played it on the monitor, it looked for a moment like a movie in the cinema. I know most of the footage shown in this video are random shots without a story, but in most cases they are cropped away to convey something. I'm not saying you need an anamorphic setup to make your footage look good. It is not the hardware, it is always the person to create the look. I'm just presenting one of the cheapest options to get 2.4:1 look with kinda proper squeeze ratio. There are cheaper setups with APS-C cameras and 1.3x anamorphics, but I think this one gives the best value for the money. Anyway, this setup is very fun to shoot. Maybe the lack of other codecs than long GOP in 6K open gate is a bit limiting, but still 6K footage in Cinemascope looks very impressive. The minimalistic version of the setup without the MatteBox and the follow focus is just 2400 grams, and yesterday I walked with it in my hand for more than 2 hours without a sweat. I had to switch the hand from time to time but generally it was very light. Any cons? Not a deal breakers, but worth mentioning. How easy is it to focus with this simplified version without the follow focus? It is not that easy, because when you de-squeeze the footage, it becomes smaller, especially on the Atomos. Even though Atomos got 1.6 ratio de-squeeze, the image does not cover the full width of the screen and is really small. And the focus picking on the Atomos is not that precise, so it is kinda challenging task. My 7-inch Anti-Cine monitor is not better than Atomos, because in the anamorphic mode, it loses the ability to zoom in. I can zoom on Atomos Ninja to X2, and Shinobi actually allows X4 zoom. And there is also 7-inch version of the Shinobi, so I guess 7-inch Shinobi is the best option for pulling focus with this setup. I wonder how good Blackmagic Design Video Assist is in displaying the squeezed footage, and what is maximum magnification there. I haven't found this info yet. Also, focus throw on this lens is only 120 degrees, so it's not that impressive. And what about image stabilization on this rig? I have used anamorphic stabilization mode, but unfortunately S5 II series does not have 1.6 option, so I use the closest 1.5. Not sure if this impacts the stabilization or not, the wrong ratio, but it looks like it is not as good as with spherical lenses, so maybe. I wish Panasonic adds 1.6 stabilization and the squeeze in the firmware update. Although for this squeeze it's not that crucial, 1.5 is close enough for monitoring. So this is anamorphic rig on a budget. The camera and the lens is around 3,600 bucks, less if there is a promo. Atomos is 400, cage with the handle and the clamp around 120, SSD like 100 bucks, and the filters they start from 100, and all other small accessories around 50 bucks. So the whole setup is less than 4,400, a bit more if you want follow focus and full MatteBox. And so far I'm really happy with that rig. I've been playing with it for 3 days, although this lens has some limitations and cons, like the closest focus distance or focus breathing, but I will share more about the lens in separate video. So happy shooting and cheers mate!